Welcome to the Surviving BPD Relationship Breakup Podcast. If someone in your life has BPD, you know how difficult it can be, and you need to learn how to heal from those toxic relationships. And that's where this show comes in. Expert education, expert knowledge, expert insight, and delivered with compassion and empathy. With your host, counselor and trauma recovery coach, AJ Mahari. To purchase and book sessions with AJ, go to ajmahari.ca. Now your host, AJ Mahari.
A couple things before we start this episode. I have a website for this podcast, and it's at survivingbpdrelationshipbreakup.com. Interactive website. It's a website is its own feed for the podcast and also for my YouTube channel. So if you'd like to get a lot of the videos that aren't in this podcast, you'd like to check those out, you can do that at survivingbpdrelationshipbreakup.com. I would just like to encourage you to please leave a 5-star rating for this podcast if you find it helpful, to help this podcast keep growing and keep reaching more and more people who could benefit from this content. I get a lot of people with BPD rating it at 1 star because, they have all these problems with what I'm saying, and they think it's horrible and disgusting and all that kind of BPD kind of stuff. Now, let's dive into today's episode. Why BPD partners or exes become the borderline's persecutory object. Have you ever been idealized, then suddenly devalued and discarded by someone with borderline personality disorder, leaving you confused, heartbroken, lost, doubting yourself, ruminating, experiencing cognitive dissonance, among other things? You may have become their persecutory object. In fact, people do become the persecutory object of anyone with untreated borderline personality disorder. So I'd like to just walk you through why this happens, not because you were bad or wrong, or because you weren't good enough, or because you didn't try hard enough, but because of deep psychological pain inside the person with BPD that gets projected outward and on to you. What is a persecutory object? In object relations theory, a persecutory object is a split-off, internalized figure, often linked to trauma or neglect, that becomes associated with threat, shame, and or abandonment. For the person with borderline personality disorder, this, quote, bad object, unquote, is not just internal. Starts off internally. It gets projected onto real people, especially close loved ones, a partner, even like as you become ex, but maybe you're not accepting that yet. Or you could be the adult child. You could have been the adult child of somebody with BPD, and you become a persecutory object as well. These persecutory objects originate from early caregivers who were inconsistent, abusive, abandoning, or overwhelming. The person with BPD, the individual with BPD, doesn't have an integrated sense of, quote, good enough, others. So when attachment becomes threatening, they split. And more to the point, they don't really attach because trying to attach or getting close to perhaps beginning to attach is too threatening. It's too overwhelming for them. The fear of abandonment is too great. And I'll have more coming just simply on fear of abandonment soon because it's much more than just what it sounds like. So secondly, here in terms of the persecutory object, splitting is the root cause, the root of the issue. Splitting in borderline personality disorder is a primitive defense mechanism. People with BPD often cannot hold a unified, stable image of others. You're either all good or all bad. When the person with BPD feels triggered, often by intimacy, conflict, perceived rejection, their internal world flips. You were once the, quote, savior, unquote, or, quote, perfect partner, unquote. You were actually the object other parent representation of good parent or good, wonderful, perfect parent always longed for, never had. But now you feel like a villain to them. You become the, quote, bad parent, unquote. You become to them in their unconscious repetition compulsion cycles of re-experiencing something that happened with a parent more often than not. You've now become the persecutor to them. Doesn't mean you're doing anything like that. And number 3, how you become the persecutory object. This shift isn't about who you are. It's about who you represent to the borderline's unconscious mind. You get associated with the original attachment wound and or abandonment wound. Your boundary becomes rejection. Any boundary. Any need that you have becomes rejection to the borderline. Your needs become demands that overwhelm them and then compete with all their unmet needs, and they don't have any room or space for you as a separate individual. Your absence becomes abandonment. Your absence could be simply you looked out the window, or you had to stop and tie your shoelace, because your absence is to a person with BPD that will make you this persecutory object in their internal sort of experience, though they don't know this consciously, happens the second you're not focused on them, because they're trying to seek identity through you. And if you're just not focused on them even for a couple minutes, that's abandonment too. Abandonment goes so deep. What they experience is abandonment. It's not actually that you are abandoning them, but your lack of being totally focused on them and sharing everything with them in a moment, which is usually focused on them and their needs, becomes abandonment to them in a heartbeat. And your truth, so the fact that you're a separate person, the fact that you have your own needs, even though maybe you're not so much like being who you are, you've lost yourself, you're not really focused on your own needs, you're self-sacrificing, you're losing yourself, that's why you're getting so exhausted, that's why this is so impossible, and then it just starts hurting more and more. Well, your truth, your needs, your separateness as an individual, although a lot of people with codependency aren't exactly living that way with somebody with BPD, your truth becomes betrayal to them, which makes no sense in the here and now, and it has nothing to do with you. In this emotional chaos, they project their internal pain and fear all onto you. You become that persecutory object. And the 4th thing here, the breakup, escalation of projection from a devaluation all bad split for the person with BPD toward you. After a breakup, the projection will intensify from the borderline. You may be accused of things you didn't do, you've never thought of doing. Things often they will say that you did that they actually did. Crazy making. They may rage, give you the silent treatment, ghost or punish you with their silence and or their back and forth if they're ragey, and then they're acting, they're just abusive at this point. You might be erased or replaced rapidly. This is not always, it's really not personal, actually. It's not about you. It's not your fault. It's how the borderline tries to protect themselves from the unbearable vulnerability of loss. Yes, even in the perceived, not actually like about to occur, but once they have that perception of the vulnerability of loss, whether it comes from the engulfment anxiety or the abandonment anxiety, you're just now, unfortunately, the stand-in for all of their abandonment, trauma, betrayal, and with the fear of engulfment, being too close, can't handle that, feeling controlled, with the fear of abandonment. Oh, you looked at your watch for 2 seconds. Oh my God, who am I without you? Like paying attention to me is a borderline dilemma unconsciously, and so you're a stand-in for all their abandonment, trauma, betrayal, and fear of annihilation that rests under all of these other fears, vulnerabilities, etc., that people with BPD don't really know what all that's about. They just keep getting triggered, and their triggers are internal, not your fault. and they just keep putting it out on you. You have literally become a persecutory object. They don't see you as you when they're in all this splitting to devaluation, betraying, blaming, screaming at you, silent treatment. It's all designed to protect them from what's happening inside of them. Maybe what happened to them in childhood, repeating, repetition compulsions over and over. But you, make no mistake about it, you are the persecutory object bearing the brunt of all of this, and it has nothing to do with you. And people with codependency always think, oh my God, what did I do? I got to make it right. Oh, now, and then people say, well, I know more about BPD now, so I should go back. I got to get my ex back because I could make it better, because I could do this, and I wouldn't take this that way, and I wouldn't do that with this and that. No, you're the persecutory object. You're the, quote, bad object. You're the, quote, object of their bad parent representation, unquote. There's no coming back from that with a person with BPD. They have no trust. They don't have a container of self. They don't ever see or hear you, and not even in the idealization. And had some good times with them, then you've had fragmented little pieces of the shards left over from the loss of themselves, the emotional arrested development. You've experienced pieces of that, but there's no whole there. There's no person that you fell in love with. They're not who you thought they were. And this is devastating for people to try to work out. And that's, again, why I recommend, and I'm out here to work with you if I resonate with you, people need therapy for this, to understand all of it, let alone to break the trauma bond, heal your codependency, be able to accept a relationship is ended the way it's ended. All this stuff has happened to you. What are you going to do about it now? How are you going to make any sense out of it? I help people make sense out of it all the time, and I've been doing this with people for 35 years. So if I resonate with you, I'm out here to work with you. For the codependent partner, the fifth thing here, you likely feel devastated, misunderstood, and deeply confused, not to mention extremely, extremely hurt. You may try to, quote, prove your innocence, unquote, quote, rescue them, or, quote, fix the misunderstanding, unquote, of which there will be millions, endlessly misunderstandings with the untreated borderline. You're trying to fix that. You're trying to get them to hear you. It's like, hey, wait a minute, and you're trying to plead a case for yourself when you became the persecutory object of the borderline. It's got nothing to do with you, actually. It's just that you're there and it all gets dumped on you. And there's nothing okay about that. And there's nothing about attachment, and there's nothing about love in that. It's abuse. And it's not that they're always doing it on purpose, but it doesn't matter because you can't live like that. You're losing yourself. You're trying to fix misunderstandings that are their misunderstandings, and they confuse you. And you're trying to rescue them and prove your innocence and tell them, like, I'm a really good person, because you are, and you're really trying to care, but you're giving way too much away and you're losing yourself. You can't argue someone out of their borderline projection. You just can't. What you really need to do in working with someone is grieve the fantasy of the relationship. Recognize the cycle of idealization and devaluation. Stop absorbing the projection. It's not about you or your worth, or that you did something wrong, or that you're not worthy of this person, or anything like that. Reclaim your identity outside of the persecutor role that's been put on you by a person with BPD because of this object-other relations where they aren't really relating to you through their repetition compulsions inside, which is trauma-based, largely, usually, most often. They're going to be treating you and acting and reacting to you, relating to you just like you are that really bad, awful, horrible, never good enough parent. And you get put in that position probably more quickly than you realized, probably way more often than you realized. Probably you didn't even realize the depth of what this means. You become their persecutory object. You cannot fight for innocence. You cannot fight to rescue them. You cannot fight for them to see who you really are, because they never did see who you really were. And now it's just not even a possibility. And if they come back and they're hoovering you and, I'm sorry for whatever, I don't know what I did. I did no personal responsibility taking, etc. Well, you're getting intermittent reinforcement if you take them back, but you're going to get more hurt because you're never getting out of the persecutory role once the major splitted evaluation has occurred. That some people can't say, was it this one, that one, 10 times ago? But there'll be one major one, and there's no coming back from it. And all of the splitted evaluation after that, you're not going to get re-idealized, but they come back to base mood. You keep trying this. It's really, really, really unhealthy for you. Psychologically, physically, spiritually, just every which way. So the 6th point here, healing the internal landscape. What does that involve for somebody with BPD? Well, they need therapy focused on integrating split objects. And that's just only like a huge part of the work. It's not all of it that people with BPD need to go to therapy to do. They need to be working in therapy to develop a stable sense of self, because they're never going to have a stable sense of you, of other, when they don't have a stable sense of self. They're always going to be projecting onto you the persecutory object reality of the repetition, unconscious repetition compulsion cycles of how they got wounded in the first place. And even with some genetics involved, it's not, BPD is not all genetics. So they get wounded either by perceived abandonment or actual abandonment and or other trauma. And people with BPD would have to go to therapy to learn to tolerate ambivalence in relationships, that people can disappoint you and love you at the same time. They have zero understanding of this when they're untreated. Processing early trauma that fuels the persecutory dynamics is another big piece that people with BPD need to choose therapy on their own and take responsibility for it. And no, you can't try to make your relationship continue to work because you remain the persecutory object. You're in the persecutory object dynamics, and they need 8 to 16 years if they're going to have success in therapy and become a person who can have whole object relations. And by the way, most people with codependency are not even experiencing whole object relations either. That's not to say that you're experiencing the kind of split up object relations that are way deeper than most people talk about out here online and in that vast echo chamber where, all over the place. The point is, it is not only a matter of how hopeless this is and how you don't want to know that. It's a matter of, it's not like you just can hang in there and they'll keep coming back or on or off in relationship or cycle, or like all these other people out there are doing a gigantic abusive disservice to people, saying, well, just pay me and I can help you get your ex back. I can help you reattract a borderline. And then, what do you want to do that for? Because you're always going to be the persecutory object. And you can't make them go to therapy. And DBT skills doesn't touch the depth of what they need to process in therapy to find a self, to be able to have that sense of self, to then be able to reframe the sense of other so that everybody else isn't just this persecutory object. Because for people with BPD, that's what each and every single one of you are, is unless they get enough treatment, but they're not going to do that within the time frame of your relational dynamics between you and them in the trauma bond where you are the persecutory object. You're never going to catch a break from this. They can't change it. You get assigned, you get labeled this unconsciously by them, and they project it all over you. You can't get it off you. You can't plead your innocence. You can't change this persecutory object projection. That's all they really experience from you. That's why every 5 seconds something's wrong. It has nothing to do with what you're doing. It has nothing to do with your logic. It has nothing to do with how you're trying to explain stuff to them. But trying to explain stuff to them, tragically, is just like trying to explain, anything you can think of off the top of your head that's not maybe even as half complicated as this, to like a 3-year-old or a 2-year-old. It just, they can't get it because there's no self to put it in, and you are a persecutory object, so no matter what you say, it's only going to make them defend more and more and more. And you're pushed further and further and further away, whether you actually get ghosted or discarded, broken up with, cycles around, or whatever's going on. You're not going to get out of the persecutory object role. If you've been made into the persecutory object by someone with borderline personality disorder, please remember this truth. You are not the monster they see. You are caught in the storm of someone else's unhealed torment, trauma, and pain. You can walk away. You can detach with love or with hate, whatever you need, and learn how to develop more healthy boundaries for yourself and choose healing over the agony, the nightmare, the confusion, the exhaustion, the losing yourself. Make no mistake about it. When you are the persecutory object of the borderline, and you are, just ipso facto, by the way, there's no coming back out of that. They need their own healing recovery that takes 8 to 16 years. Really, let me stress, 10 to 16 years, closer to 16 years. If they're really going to do this healing and recovery, that is possible from BPD. And it's not, quote, psychiatry's cure, because there is no such thing. Bottom line is you need to get yourself into therapy right now. You matter. You can't rescue or save or change anybody else, but you matter, and you're losing yourself. You're becoming a shadow of who you once knew. It is agonizing rumination, cognitive dissonance. You feel like it's all your fault. And somehow people with codependency, I say to you, with like all kinds of agape and respect and empathy, for some reason from childhood in your codependent response to life that you had to adapt, that you didn't choose and it's not your fault. Now it's your responsibility to heal, though. In all of that, you continue to believe that, geez, if you just do better, if you did say this and you don't say that, and you try this and you try the other, you're turning yourself inside out, and you know what? You end up running out of self almost, and you don't want to get there. It's dangerous. And for people with codependency, it's often life-threatening as well. You become the persecutory object of the borderline, and there's no coming back from that. And that is tragic, that is heartbreaking, that is confusing, that is all kinds of agonizing something that you don't want to hear. But maybe that's what you need to understand. If you want to understand this even more, I can explain all this to the nines in individual sessions with people, because when you explain to me that person with BPD in your life and all that you've been through and the way that their patterns work, because all people with BPD, in spite of patterns, are individuals, ladies and gentlemen, and they are not all the same. And when you go all over the place on the internet and it's like, oh, mine too, she did this, she did that, he did this, he did that. They're not so monolithic at all. They're individuals, each and every one of them, with some core patterns, but they'll manifest a lot of those core patterns in different ways, in different time frames. It just so can be so like overwhelmingly like you just can't catch it. You just can't get on top of it. You are the persecutory object, and you can't get out of the role. You have no control, nor does the person with BPD have any control over this endless, unconscious repetition compulsion of re-experiencing you and experiencing you pretty much constantly at some point, more than anything else. You're lost. You almost like die to the borderline for who you are. And then you're the projection. You're the object, the persecutory object in the projection. And nothing you say or do, or how many times you try to prove yourself, you're a great person, you're a wonderful man, a wonderful woman, you're giving, they don't see it, they don't get it, they can't internalize it, there's no self there. You're going to remain the persecutory object. You need to get yourself into therapy. I'm out here to work with people that resonate with me. You need to understand this much more deeply and in a very personal way. You need to know why everything seems to be so about you, but it's not really about you. But you can't change their image that is projected onto you as persecutory object. You can't do it. You need to find your way out of the trauma bond to heal, to break the trauma bond, to be able to take yourself back. You're losing yourself. And some people, by the way, ladies and gentlemen, with codependency, they're taking their lives more than ever before. I hate to report, and yes, I've experienced this with clients in the last few years and recently, that people with codependency trying to be that right person, that good person, that against the persecutory object reality that the borderline has you suspended in, and they don't even know it, more and more people are ending up unaliving themselves. Please don't be a statistic. Please get into help. Please know this relationship isn't going to work out. I know nobody wants to hear this, but I hope you'll listen to me. Well, why should you? I don't know, except I know what I'm talking about. And it's probably not what you want to hear, but it's absolutely what you need to hear. You matter. You are somebody. But right now, you probably don't even know who that is anymore. You can't keep sacrificing yourself to this person, no matter how much you might still even care about them, or you feel horrible for them. Some people don't have those feelings for people after all this goes down. But the persecutory object that is projected onto you, that's all the borderline's going to see from a certain point and beyond. So I hope that you hear this, and I hope that you hear my emotion behind it, because it's for you. It's to try to say to you, come on, it's time for you to help you. This person can't love you. This person with BPD untreated, they can't, and they need a lot of treatment, not just some DBT therapy. They can't attach to you. They can't love you. They have no reference for who the hell you are, for who you really are. For now, you don't even know who you are anymore. This is devastating stuff, ladies and gentlemen, and you won't survive it if you keep hanging in there thinking somehow you can. Literally, sometimes people just don't survive it. People always talking about how people with BPD might unalive themselves. Well, now I'm here with the bad news of not only are you the persecutory object, and you can't dent the projection of persecutory object onto you from a borderline. You can't change it, fix it, do anything with it. You need to get into therapy. You need to get away from the borderline. You need to go no contact. If there's children involved, extreme low contact, and it's a more difficult process, but you still need to do this for you. Because if you do have children, how are you going to be a good mom or dad to your kids if you don't even know who you are anymore? Borderline persecutory object. That's each and every one of you. You can't stay there. You can't continue to be that. And you can't change it, and you can't fix it, and you can't stop it, and the borderline doesn't understand it. If you talk to them about it, they'll just deflect. They'll just, like, what are you talking about? You're like that. Yeah. It's not even worth it. I hope this was helpful. I hope it was educative, because I'm going to be trying to hit harder at the deeper things that are going on with people with borderline personality disorder, where I hope that you can hear there is no hope. There is no dishonor in going, wow, I can't handle this anymore. I can't do this anymore. I can't live like this anymore. I can't go through this anymore. You need to realize this. Get into help and therapy. And I'm out here to work with people. I resonate with you so that you can save yourself. And whatever a person with BPD is going to do with treatment or no treatment or whatever, you need to get out, get your treatment, break the trauma bond, find yourself even more for the first time, but of course who you've lost so far, because you don't deserve to live your life trying to rescue and fix someone else so you can feel better. No, they're making you feel worse. They're risking your life as well as their own in so many ways. You're the projected persecutory object. That projection is on you. You can't fix it, change it, ameliorate it, get rid of it. No, you have no power. It's time to realize that your only way forward and your way back to empowerment and being an individual person and knowing more about yourself and healing and breaking the trauma bond and healing the codependency, getting your closure and more. I help clients to do that, and I've been doing it for 35 years. So out here to work with you. If I resonate with you, please realize what you're up against. You're not going to make this relationship work.
You've been listening to the Surviving BPD Relationship Breakup Podcast with your host, counselor and trauma recovery coach, AJ Mahari. For more or get sessions with AJ, go to ajmahari.ca. See you next time.